Welcome to the course AE403 Biomedical Instrumentation for the students of S7 Applied Electronics and Instrumentation under the Kerala Technological University. This is Lisa Annie Joseph, Assistant Professor, Department of Applied Electronics and Instrumentation, Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology, making you the presentation. It is a well-known fact that the practice of medicine these days is heavily dependent upon technology, and we find clinicians using a wide variety of technology in diagnosing, treating and assessing the care of their patients. In recent times, the developments in medical devices and equipment, information technology and biotechnology are having a very important role for the better diagnosis and treatment of various diseases. So, biomedical engineering is very important in the area of the life sciences. It is an interdisciplinary field that involves engineering, biology, chemistry and medicine. And biomedical instrumentation is used to take measurements that are used especially in monitoring, diagnostics and therapy. Now let us see a few fields of biomedical engineering. The first and foremost is bioinstrumentation. Herein, the bioinstrumentation applies the fundamentals of measurement science to biomedical instrumentation. It also emphasizes the common principle with making measurements in living cells. Another area of biomedical engineering is biomaterials, which finds application in developing engineering materials in producing medical devices and also for prosthetics. Yet another area in biomedical engineering is biomechanics, where the behavior of biological tissues and fluids are studied and also is used in the design principles of ergonomics. Most importantly, we have another area that is of biosignals, which is actually used as a mechanism for signal production, which is applicable for extracting the information to understand the human behavior in various systems. Let us now move into the different physiological systems of the body, because a biomedical engineer has to understand the systems in the body so as to have an interface between the man and the machine. So the foremost physiological systems in the body are the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the respiratory system and so on. Let me now explain a little bit about the cardiovascular system. The main component of the cardiovascular system is the heart. Heart has 4 chambers, 2 auricles or atria and 2 ventricles. And they are supported by huge tubings called the aorta and the pulmonary artery. The atria are in the top and the ventricles are in the bottom of the heart. So the heart actually supplies oxygen or allows the pumping of blood to various parts of the body for all the metabolic activities from the left ventricle through the aorta. And on its return, it collects the deoxygenated blood from various parts of the body and brings back to the right atria. From there, the blood is opened into the right ventricles and the pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs for exchanging the carbon dioxide with fresh oxygen. And so this cycle continues. The heart has two kinds of activities, mainly the diastolic activity and the systolic activity. The diastole is the filling phase of the heart. So the atria gets filled with blood during diastole, while the systole is the pumping phase of the heart. So it is the contraction of the ventricles that moves the blood out of both the ventricles. Now, this picture shows the entire circulation of the blood from the heart to the different parts of the body for metabolic activities, whereby the blood carries the oxygen. And on its return, it brings back the carbon dioxide, that is the residue of metabolic activities, back into the superior and inferior vena cavas from both the head and arm section as well as the trunk and leg sections. So it is then opened into the ventricles, and from there it is again pumped in volume to the lungs for oxygenation of the blood once again. The second important system, very important system of the human body is the nervous system. Now the nervous system is the main area where the control and communication network of the body is available. So it is the nervous system which communicates with the various parts of the body so that the whole integrated activity of the different organs and tissues are coordinated in a well balanced way. Now the three main parts of the brain are the cerebrum, the brainstem and the cerebellum. Now the cerebrum is actually taking care of the conscious function of the human body, while the cerebellum is basically involved in the body balance and the muscle movement, well coordinated muscle movement of the body. And finally, the brain stem connects the brain to the spinal cord and to the different parts of the body for the rest of the coordination in communication. Now the brain is actually made up of two hemispheres, and the hemispheres are in turn having four lobes called as the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe and the occipital lobe. These lobes are in turn connected with different parts of the body, and all the activities of different parts are coordinated with these lobes. The neuron is the basic functional unit of the brain. It's also called as the nerve cell. Now it is this functional unit which communicates with different parts and the brain. Electrical signals are made to move from the brain to the different parts and vice versa. Depending upon the application, the size of the nerve cell can be as small as a millimeter to as long as a meter. So you may find hundreds and thousands of neurons in a human body. Let us now look into a reflex action by the neurons. The communication is had by the neurons. You can see the reflex action of the human body reacting when it is coming across the stamping of a nail. So immediately the efferent neurons, which senses the prick of the nail, transfers the information to the brain, and the brain in return through the efferent neurons will communicate to the muscles, the leg muscles of the body, informing to lift the leg so as to avoid the pain or stamping onto the nail. The muscular system is also quite strong, so this is also an important system in the human structure. So let us now look into the various sources of the biomedical signals. We have many sources of information from the human body. To name a few, we have the electroencephalogram, which actually gives the information regarding the activity of the brain, which we in short call as EEG. Then we have the electrocardiogram, which gives out the signals based on the function of the heart. We have the electromyogram, which gives the function of the muscles. We are able to get the galvanic skin resistance, which gives the impedance of the skin. Similarly, we have various other locations from where we can gather the pulse rate, the heartbeat, etc. So put together, in a nutshell, there are several sources of biomedical signals. To name a few, the bioelectric signals, which are actually generated either by the nerve cells or the muscle cells or the cells of the heart, which give information regarding the function of each of these systems. Then we may have bioacoustic signals, which is actually created by the sound due to the flow of the blood in the heart through the heart's valves, or the flow of air through the upper and lower airways and in the lungs, etc. We may have, or we may find, biomechanical signals, which actually gives idea about the mechanical function of the biological system. Especially, they include the types of motion, the displacement of the signals, the pressure and flow signals, etc. The biochemical signals are obtained as a result of chemical measurements from the living tissue or from the samples analyzed in the laboratory. Biomagnetic signals are extremely weak magnetic fields produced by various organs such as heart, brain, lungs, etc. We may have bio-optical signals which are generated as a result of the optical activities of the biological system. Then the bioimpedance signals, which is actually a source of information concerning with the composition, blood distribution and blood volume, etc. within a tissue. And so, the branch of science that includes the measurement of physiological variables and parameters is known as biometrics. Now let us see what is the difference between an ordinary instrumentation system and a biomedical instrumentation system. To understand that, let us see what are the factors that are to be considered for the design or the specification of the medical instrumentation system. So while designing a medical instrumentation system, one of the important parameter to be considered is the range. The range of an instrument is generally considered to be including all the levels of input amplitude and frequency over which the device is expected to operate. Secondly, the sensitivity of an instrument determines how small a variation of a variable or parameter can be reliably measured. Next comes linearity. The degree to which the variations in the output of an instrument follow input variations is referred to as linearity of the device. Sometimes it is also purposely introduced to have a nonlinear operation so as to get a desired effect. Hysteresis, as is already considered, is the characteristic of some instruments whereby a given value of the measured variable results in a different reading when reached in an ascending direction from that obtained when it is reached in a descending direction. Mechanical frictions in a meter may cause the moving needle to lag behind certain conditions. So this may be an example of such an error. The next important factor is frequency response. Now, the frequency response of an instrument is its variation in sensitivity over the frequency range of the measurement. It is very important to display a wave shape that is a faithful reproduction of the original physiological signal. Accuracy gives us the measure of errors that probably creep in a measurement. Now, the errors may be with respect to the electronic components involved, the mechanical errors in movements, meter movements, the errors due to temperature variations, and even the reading errors due to parallax, inadequate illumination, and so on. Signal to noise ratio is an important factor which is to be maintained very high so as to have very low noise component. The noise components in a hospital environment may be due to power line frequency noise, which is usually picked up by long leads, and also interferences due to electromagnetic, electrostatic, or diathermy equipments can also lead to noises. Stability of the instrument is very essential, especially it is the ability of a system to resume a steady state condition following a disturbance at the input rather than be driven into uncontrollable oscillation. Another important aspect in designing an instrumentation system, a very important aspect, is the isolation. Since measurements are made on patients or experimental animals, the instrument should not produce a direct electrical connection between the subject and the ground. And finally, the instrument should be as simple as possible to eliminate the chance of a component or human error. So these are the factors to be considered while designing a biomedical instrumentation system. Now let us see what are the objectives for a man instrument system. Obviously, the most important objective is information gathering. So, in an information gathering system, instrumentation is used to measure the natural phenomena and other variables to enable to get important information regarding a patient for further betterment of the humankind. It is also important to have proper diagnosis so that the errors are diagnosed and detected properly and necessary treatment can be done so that malfunctions can be removed. Measurements are used to determine the ability of a system to meet its functional requirements. So, evaluation of the system is also important. The next important objective is monitoring. Instrumentation is used to monitor some processes or operation. The best example that we can think about at this stage is the patient monitoring system in an intensive care unit. So the monitors give all the vital parameters regarding a patient, and not only that, certain alarms are raised whenever the normal standard levels of these vital parameters are fluctuating. And finally, the last objective is about control. Instrumentation is also used to automatically control the operation of a system based on changes in one or more of the internal parameters or in the output of the system. The best example that can be considered here is inducing drug into a person in a very slow and effective manner. So pump infusion is the procedure used under such condition. Let us now look into the basic medical instrumentation system, which includes man also as an entity. So this is the difference between the ordinary instrumentation system, which we commonly use for other systems, and the man instrument system. So the basic component here is the man himself, and hence the physical parameters, or rather the physiological parameters that are being measured, are the first important component. So the measurement is the first important entity of the basic medical instrumentation system. Secondly, a transducer sensor arrangement is essential, which is an arrangement capable of converting one physical parameter into another readable parameter. In a man instrument system, a transducer is used to produce an electrical signal that is an analog of the phenomenon being measured. The transducer may measure temperature, pressure, flow, or any other such variables that can be found in the human body. But the output will be electrical signal. Next, a signal conditioner plays a vital role in conditioning the obtained signal or the acquired signal. So it amplifies, it modifies the obtained electrical signal suitably so that it is understandable by the person who is actually reading and measuring it. Then, a meaningful display system is also a part of the basic medical instrumentation system. So, whatever signal has been captured should be in a form that can be perceived by one of the man's senses and can convey information obtained by the measurement in a meaningful way. So the input to the display device can be a modified electrical signal from the signal conditioning equipment. The output may be in some form of visual, audible, or possibly tactile information. And finally, a recording, data processing and transmission equipment. It is mostly desirable to record the measured information for possible later use or to transmit from one location to another so as to do various researches on that, or probably to transfer it to the doctors through the DICOM medium to their local area, through their local area networks to their necessary system. So it will be available to view the condition of the acquired parameters in the office of the doctor. So for various reasons, recording, processing and transmission equipment also happens to be a part of the basic component. And also control devices are available whenever it is desirable to have automatic control of the stimulus given to the patient or control at any part of the man instrument system. The system usually consists of a feedback loop in which part of the output from the signal conditioning or display equipment is used to control the operation of the system in some way. So let us have a look at the block diagram of the man instrument system based on the explanation that we had in our last slide. So here we have the man as the main object for acquiring signals. Various transducers can be placed on the human body, have proper signal conditioning equipments to get the required mode of the signal. It may be displayed, it may be recorded or processed and transmitted for later use, and also can have control elements to give appropriate feedback at appropriate locations. Now let us see what are the problems encountered in measuring a living system. The first and foremost problem encountered is the difficulty in measuring the variables, especially when it is inaccessible. So, it is an important problem in attempting measurements from a living system, as it is very difficult to gain access to the variable that is being measured. So in such difficult situations, the medical operations are also sometimes required to place a transducer in a particular position so that a variable can be measured from the human subjects and sometimes even with animal measurements. Secondly, it may be found that there may be variability in the data. The variables that can be measured in the human body are definitely deterministic variables. But sometimes it may be found that measurements taken under a fixed set of conditions at one time will not necessarily be the same as similar measurements made under the same condition at another time. So variability of data from subject to subject is also possible. And third important problem encountered is the lack of knowledge about interrelationship. Physiological measurements being measured by a physician or a technician should have good knowledge about the interrelationships between various systems in the body. Else there may be differences of opinion in the measurements. Interaction among physiological systems is also another problem encountered while measuring a living system. There can be a severe degree of interaction within a given system and among the major systems. The result is that stimulation of one part of a given system generally affects all other parts of that system in some way or the other. Next problem encountered is the effect of the transducer on the measurement. Almost any kind of measurement is affected in some way by the presence of the measuring transducer. This problem is especially compounded in the measurement of living system. In many situations, the physical presence of a transducer changes the reading significantly. The next important issue regarding the problem is the artifacts. In medicine and biology, the term artifacts refers to any component of a signal and is represented as a variable along with the signal. Thus, the random noise generated within the measuring instrument, the electrical interference, the crosstalk, and all other unwanted variations in the signal are considered as artifacts. Even the movement of the subject or the patient is sometimes considered to be as an artifact. And the next limitation is regarding energy. All the equipments and instruments used for or used as measuring system works with energy. So many physiological measurement techniques require certain amount of energy applied to the living system in order to obtain a measurement. So in such cases, some of the transducers, for example, may generate a small amount of heat due to the current flow. Most of the cases, it is found to be very low. However, this also is an important consideration while designing and while procuring information from a system. And finally, the safety considerations. The methods employed in measuring variables in a living human system must be in no way endanger the life of a normal functioning of the subject. Hence, safety considerations are also very important while designing a man-instrument system. To conclude, even though man is highly skilled, it is found that he is slow in arithmetic operations. He is also affected by fatigue, boredom, and also susceptible to committing errors. Not only that, humans usually find analysis made by humans are usually subjective and qualitative, and analysis subject to inter-observer as well as intra-observer variations. So, with all these into consideration, better and neat and clean measurements are done with the help of computer-aided diagnosis. So with that note, I end this first session on biomedical instrumentation. Thank you.